Not that I don't have anything interesting to say. I just feel like I'm so used to learning lines and having somebody tell me what to do.
Yeah.
That coming up with things to say out of my own head is always just kind of giving me a little bit of anxiety.
Right.
I'm Ryan Parker Knox, and I'm a member of the Rogue Acting Ensemble.
Where have you been, and are you back?
I am back. When I came to visit Joe and Cindy last summer, first thing Cindy said was, "So how was your sojourn?" And I loved that. I loved that question. Since my last appearance in The Beauty Queen of Leenane 3 years ago, I did some journeying within and figured some things out. Went through some things like I'm sure a lot of the population did.
What did you want to be when you were growing up?
Well, they asked me that in third grade, and we had to draw a picture of it. And I was torn between governor of South Dakota and a professional roller skater. And so I drew a picture of myself at a podium with a suit on and a mustache, with one little leg with a roller skate sticking out from behind the podium. And then later that fall, I was cast in my first play. My mom's best friend was directing a play, and she asked her if I could be in the play, and there were about 30 other kids in the play. And being there and getting there and realizing that I got to play pretend with 30 other people for a few hours every night was such an appealing idea that I have been doing it for nearly 40 years since.
What was the play?
The Best Christmas Pageant Ever.
Uh-huh.
I got lines. I got like 2 or 3 lines in this play, and one of my lines induced a big laugh from the 200-seat audience, and I was like, hooked from that moment on. I did a couple of community theater plays, and every year my hometown would do a big summer musical, and me and my 3 siblings were those Knox kids, and we were always in the musicals, and my dad was in the orchestra pit playing the piano. And I just started doing, community theater plays, and then junior high plays, and high school plays, and it was like my one respite. It was my one place where nobody could touch me, and I was in my element. I was in my comfort zone, my sanctuary. After my first year of college, I got my first professional job at a summer stock theater, and just have kind of had the pedal to the floor ever since.
How did you end up in Tucson at the Rogue Theater?
After nearly 11 years in Minnesota, which was after 25 years in South Dakota, I had 35 Midwestern winters, and I was just ready for a change. I have a friend back in Minnesota who went to grad school with Angela Horsham. And he knew that I was here without knowing anybody, and so he connected me and Angela and then Matt Wally. Then they introduced me to the Rogue, and I came to help out, doing some set stuff, and then had an audition that following spring. And then I became an ensemble member, and I didn't do any plays here in Tucson with anybody else until just this last fall, after I moved back to town.
What was it like? Coming into the world of the Rogue and the way Rogue does theater after doing so many musicals and summer stock?
When I first learned what the entire season was, I was like, what is that play, and that play, and that play, and oh, Mother Courage, and that play, and oh, a Shakespeare. It was challenging in every way an actor dreams of being challenged, intellectually, physically, and mentally, and but it was so exciting to be around such vibrant and interesting and intellectual artists from all different walks, people who had studied clown, and people who had never studied at all, and people who were teachers and actors and musicians, and just so many different backgrounds, all conversing on one big bizarre ensemble project was exhilarating.
What do you think you might bring to the ensemble as an actor that might be unique to you?
I would say my versatility. I've never really thought of myself as the best actor or the most I don't have the most disciplined process or anything like that, but what I know I have is versatility. I know I can play the leading man. I know I can play the sidekick. I know I can play the villain. I know I can play anything. I feel really confident in my ability to disappear into a character, and that's one of the things I pride myself on more than just about anything else.
Do you have a favorite part of the rehearsal process?
First rehearsals under the lights and first rehearsals in costumes. I think costumes bring costumes obviously tell so much of the story, but they, you carry yourself differently when you're in an 18th century tuxedo than in a flannel and blue jeans, and being under the lights too, instead of just the regular fluorescence, is always, it brings so much ambiance. It just really helps to lock in and be able to focus.
Do you have a favorite role or roles that you've played here?
My favorite play is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Dead, like #1 favorite play of all time, and I got to play Guildenstern. They had originally offered me Laertes in Hamlet, and I was like, if that's all right, I'd really love to play either Rosencrantz or Guildenstern. I don't care which one, because I was more excited about RNG than I was about Hamlet, and especially getting to do that role with Patty as Rosencrantz. It'll go down as one of my all-time favorites. Playing Joe Pitt in Angels in America, I think, was probably the best show I've ever done in my whole life, and that's always been one of my favorites too. Just had a lot going on in my life personally that kind of identified with that character. So I remember Matt telling me that somebody had asked him once, and I don't remember if it was an audience member or somebody else in the cast, but during a rehearsal late in the process, they said, "What have you said to Ryan?" And Matt was like, "Nothing." I just let him go. Moby Dick is one of my all-time favorites too. Just everybody was so locked in on that production, and I just feel like that was it was an experience like I hadn't had before, creating something completely original like that. And you got to play a pretty great role, had a pretty badass costume that I really liked to wear too.
What have been some of the most challenging or difficult roles to take on here?
Penelope was one of the hardest shows I've ever had to do, and believe it or not, it didn't even have anything to do with the Speedo. I just, of all the shows I've ever done here, that's the one that I feel like I never really found that character.
I think that's just what it felt like to do that play.
Yeah, maybe.
Because that's what it felt like to direct it. And you were dynamite in that role. That role.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love that monologue, the cookies monologue. That was fabulous. Yeah. But just that whole play was like, I don't know.
Yeah, that was a tough one. What's the best acting advice you've ever been given?
I mean, it's kind of cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. But less is more. I mean, it's just talking. It's just people having conversations. And that's something that's so fascinating about the craft to me, is that it's, when you read a book, you're reading often from omniscient perspectives, and you're, every little detail. But on stage, you have to find everything about the character just by having a conversation with somebody. And I find that so fascinating. It's just talking. An old mentor of mine, she would always say, "Get on with it." I actually had that tattooed on my forearm a long time ago. I have since covered it up, but
you got on with it.
I got on with it. Yeah, exactly. I would complain or be whining, or when I was younger, I was a snotty little shit, kind of entitled, and thought that I was owed so much, and I really want to play this role, I really want to get this job, and she would just say, "So stop whining about it, get on with it, go get that job, go get it," and that was always so jarring, and at the time I thought unhelpful, until I've started to, unfortunately not till my 30s, but in my 30s and into my 40s, really started to find a lot of humility that I didn't have as a younger man. The roles will come to me if and when they're supposed to, and if not, then make do and enjoy the roles that you have at the time. I'm very lucky to get to do this thing that I have loved to do for nearly 40 years. If you have a dream, then get on with it.
Is there like a worst piece of acting advice you've been given?
Here, smoke this.
So what are you still learning? Or what do you think you have left to learn as an actor?
Well, the roles that I've done up to this point are roles for a teenager, 20-something, 30-something, 40-something. And now, as I approach the next few years of my life, as I make it to 50, I get to start exploring the late 40s, 50s, and 60-year-old roles. You know, there's so much I get to experience as I continue to work. I get to see what, you know, I get to play more fathers, and eventually I'm going to be playing grandfathers. And, you know, I've always been the wide-eyed, you know, ingenue, or the dashing leading man, and eventually I'm going to be the old curmudgeon type. I don't fear aging. I embrace it. I look forward to it.
What's it like being a sponsored actor?
It's so great. I don't even know how to explain it. It's so rewarding to maybe even get to turn it up a little notch for those people that have dedicated part of themselves to me getting to do what I love to do. So it's like nothing anywhere I've ever experienced in any other theater. I love it, and I'm always so grateful and humbled by people's generosity.
What's the Shakespeare you're waiting for Joe and Cindy to finally get around to choosing?
There are actually more than one. I mean, I think this theater has a pretty good ensemble for Romeo and Juliet right now. A bucket list one of mine is Antony and Cleopatra. I really love Coriolanus. I really think we could do a number with Julius Caesar. If I had to pick one, I would say Romeo and Juliet. And maybe in another 10, 15 years, Friar Lawrence, man. Friar Lawrence is just, he's the role to have in that show.
Yeah, you'd be great there.
I'd love to play Friar Lawrence, yeah. I still feel like I'm an 8-year-old playing pretend, but I get to keep growing and learning and creating and finding these people that appeared in somebody's head and they put down on paper. It's the stories that we tell impact people's lives, and I'm just so grateful and humble that I get to do that for a living.